evening and welcome to the Winthrop Town Council meeting, February 11th, 2025. We're in the Harvey Hearing Room. It is 6:30. Welcome all to the meeting. This meeting is on Zoom. The meeting ID 822-6728-0438. The passcode is 973-682. And the phone number 646-558-8656. Roll call, please.
Counsel Tassinari.
Here.
Counsel Costigan.
Here.
Counsel Munson.
Here.
Counsel DeMarco.
Here.
Counsel Aiello.
Here.
Counsel Swope.
Here.
Counsel DeRoss.
Here.
Vice President Belcher.
Here.
President Lettieri.
Here. Seeing a quorum, meeting is in order. Stand for the pledge, please.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minutes have been circulated for the January 21st meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to
by
approve.
Councilor
Second.
DeMarco, second by Councilor Munson. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. General information recommendations, we have two fine gentlemen here this evening for us. The first, we're going to have our attorney, Jim Cipolletta, come up and discuss a little bit about Article 97 and the ADU ordinance and compliance.
Mr. President, good evening, councilors.
Thank you.
Good, Jim. Over the past couple of months, there were some requests made for clarification regarding Article 97. So obviously, I know the council already knows what Article 97 is, how it applies, and what specific location that we're talking about with regard to that. So in a nutshell, I guess I would just like to give sort of a timeline and an overview of the land, both of Ingleside Park and in the middle school. Obviously, they're abutting properties, and they were obtained by the town at different times. So one of the things that's critical in the analysis, and actually there are two, but the more critical one is when the properties were obtained by the town and for what purposes. So, for instance, going to the middle school property first, that property was obtained by a deed from the Cummings family. And there was an initial deed that conveyed all of the property that now represents the middle school lot. And there were two confirmatory deeds later on by heirs of Mr. Cummings. And it was a woman who was appointed, a relative appointed by the probate court to represent and obtain a license for the heirs. They were trying to clean up things in the probate court and just get all of the properties that the Cummings family had squared away and in order for the probate court. So the first deed came out of Cummings to the town of Winthrop in 1872. And that conveyed all of the property that now is the middle school property. Subsequently, there were two deeds that were recorded with Suffolk Registry of Deeds with the license from the Suffolk Probate Court confirming the deed and the conveyance of 1872. And that was on behalf of some heirs, some minor heirs of Mr. Cummings that came out of the probate court to clean that up. That was in 1881. That's the Cummings deed, and that's when the town of Winthrop had full possession and ownership of the middle school property. And the middle school property, according to the title search and the deed descriptions and so forth, Cummings property is south of the Ingalls property. Ingleside Park is property that was donated by the Ingalls family, thus Ingleside. And that property was donated to the town in 1902. That's 21 years after the town had received by conveyance the middle school property. So the two properties, just to make it clear, do not overlap. They're not part of the same conveyance. They're not in the same chain of title. They come from two different families at two different times and are used for two different purposes. So Article 97, as you know, would protect land that had been conveyed for purposes of recreation, conservation, and so on and so forth, if it were stated in the conveyance. Now, it doesn't appear that when the donation of the Ingleside Park property was made, that there was any specific condition that it be used for something. However, the town seems to have adopted along the way, although there are no town meeting minutes that were able to be found to verify this, but it can be argued that the Ingleside property, now consisting of the park, was donated for parkland, and the town has been using it as parkland. Not so of the Cummings property that was conveyed for what's now the middle school property. So that's how that all happened. I think the focus here is more on the middle school property than on the park, because of what's going on with, the business that the council is doing regarding the middle school, but being cognizant of what the ramifications and the relationship is between those two properties to each other. So they are two separate and distinct properties. Their middle school is not 97, Article 97. It's likely that Ingleside Park has a feature of 97, and in order to, just drift a little bit, because this may come up later, in order for that Ingleside Park to be used for something else by the town, it may require to go to the legislature for two-thirds vote to use it for another purpose. If the courts or the title examination company, and I have the full title on that, if it is determined, or the town determines, that it falls within the purview of Article 97. If the town finds that it doesn't, then the town council can, on a vote of its own, make a finding and then convey that land for a different use, either or use it itself for a different use or conveyance. Now that's what I'm only talking about Ingleside. With regard to the middle school, none of those impediments exist. There is nothing in the title that indicates any restriction or condition. So if the town wanted to use it for a different purpose, it's only a vote of the town council by a majority of its members. It does not require any legislative approval, and you only have to follow the Massachusetts law as to changing the use, and if you were selling it to a bidder or someone who was going to develop it, follow the instructions and the mandates in 30B. So that's what the story is with Ingleside, and what the situation is with the middle school. So middle school, no Article 97. Ingleside, probably not, but there could be made an argument that if the town had adopted it by its use. But I think that's a little beyond what the question was, on the middle school.
Councilor Aiello.
So just for clarity, without having maps in front of
Right.
us, so if we look at the footprint of the proposed fire station, the proposed fire station, my recollection, is both the middle school site and the War Memorial Auditorium, but not the rest. When you look at the physical limits of the Cummings property, does the Cummings property include the War Memorial Auditorium, or is it part Ingalls property and part that?
No, it appears from the title was done by Marsh Moriarty. They're one of the premier title examiners. They do examinations for banks and title insurance companies and so on and so forth. They found no, it is squarely within the
Cummings
purview of
property.
the Cummings property,
Okay,
yes.
great, thank you, that's helpful.
And there were maps and deeds, although unfortunately, with time, they fade. And with the numbers of copies made from the original, they fade even more. But they were able to make that determination. I double-checked it, I ran the title myself, I agree with them.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor DeMarco.
I just have questions on the, on what you can do on the property. So like, for example, like, when it comes to Ingleside, it's parkland. The skate park was put there. Like, could we put a basketball court there? Like, what are our options on the property? Because there's a tennis court there, there's a basketball court, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yes.
what can we do there?
Well, I think the town has, again, sort of it has established the use itself and has treated it as it has been dedicated to conservation and recreation. So all of those things that I think that you mentioned, even
Yeah.
the skate park, I guess,
Yeah.
is recreational. There are other things, well, you couldn't,
I mean, that was put there like 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
so, no, that's all well and good. You know,
Okay.
They can do all of that.
So,
They
so,
can walk,
so,
you put gardens.
so anything recreational can go on there based on Article 97.
Yes.
Counselor Munn.
Thank you, Council President. What about the exit? If this does get voted in, the fire station gets voted in, the exit is on what land? Is it the middle school? I'm talking about the one that goes out to Brookfield, not, is that part Ingleside, part Cummings?
No, I don't have that plan to overlay it. I'm not really sure whether it is or not, but even so, I mean, it's,
Yeah, if you could explain, not necessarily the
Yeah.
minutia of the map, but I'm actually looking in a legal way. Since it's a form of egress as it stands,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be a problem to keep using it as it stands, correct?
no, because it could be an access egress to the park as well, you know. So, I mean, you're not taking it away and using it for something else that's totally maybe noxious to the current use.
Right.
So, you know, I don't see that as a problem. But I have not really, I haven't done an overlay of this onto the maps. But I think that's fairly easy to do. I think the engineering firm, they're an engineering firm,
Kessel Booze?
engaged. I mean, I don't know, I did see a plan, a plot plan of all of this land that was developed a few years ago, maybe 2017 or something. I don't think the land has shifted any, I don't think. So I don't see a problem to that exit onto Brookfield, and now I see where it goes. Unfortunately, this doesn't necessarily have all of the boundaries that are set out in that nice quill handwritten deed that and plan from the 1800s, so nothing jumped out to the title examiner, and I didn't pick up anything as a red flag, so.
Counselor Swope.
Thank you, Mr. President. Counselor Cipolletta, is there anything in writing about the actual uses of the park?
No.
So how do you know that it's okay? I mean, who decides what can go in the
Well,
park?
okay, are we talking zoning, are we talking
Zoning.
use?
I'm talking use. I thought it was a park.
It is a park, yes.
Yeah, and so there are no restrictions on what we can actually put in there?
Well, I will say this, and this is what the courts have done, you know, this, over the years, and a lot of these cases were litigated back in the 1800s and early 1900s, so we don't have a whole lot of current law, although I've cited a couple of them in my memo. But what it says is that a court looking at a question like that will take the totality of the circumstances. For instance, the donation deed by the Ingalls does not say, this shall be reserved strictly for this, and this, and you cannot do that. There are certain things you couldn't do anyway, by law. That does not appear to be the case in terms of the title examination summary. It says that there are no restrictions in it. There are no restrictions in the Ingalls deed. Now, that's a donation to the town. The town took it on with the intent of using it as park. So that was something, and a decision that the town made back in early 1900s, right? And they've been using that as if it were to be used only, so they've established their own use. And you can do that. There are certain other things, though, that may come into play, depending on what other use they may want to do it. Like, you couldn't build condos on it, you couldn't put a racetrack on it, or, you know, whatever, something that's just totally upside down.
So there's nothing that we could recommend or choose to do on it that would require us to go to the state for any kind of changes in use. We could decide as town council or as the town, if we didn't want that park, we wouldn't have to have that park. Is that what you're telling me?
No, it's always within the authority of the town to make that decision, to say, we are abandoning that use. We are disposing of that, and we want to use it as something else. You always have that authority under the Home Rule Charter.
I'll remember that about other things
Yes.
that you just said. Thank you.
And just for clarification, there are no current plans at all to use Ingleside
No,
Park for anything other
absolutely
than
not.
recreational purposes. I just want to make that point completely clear. Counselor Aiello.
Just something to double check, because I've run into this in other states, I haven't worked on this here, but federal law called Section 4F of the Environmental Protection Act does say that whether or not a park was established legally as a park or has been used as a park is indifferent. In other words, it has full park protection, so a place like Ingleside Park, if you use federal money, we basically have to be working with the guidelines that suggest that only under extreme circumstances can you change parkland to non-park land. A lot of states have what has been referred to, this is not a legal term, this is my recollection of the term, is sort of a marrying concept, that wherever 4F might apply, the same thing applies as in state statute. So it might be worth just looking
Right.
as to whether the Commonwealth ever established a marrying or mirror to the
Yes.
federal 4F. That might
Yeah.
give protections to the park.
Yeah,
I'm just not sure how.
that's an
Massachusetts does it.
interesting point, too, because under 97, one of the most salient sentences there says, land and easements taken, which they weren't, but acquired for such purpose. Now, did the town take it acquire it for the purpose and say, we want a park, and we're gonna name the park after the Ingalls? And where the courts lately have said, when you want to make those determinations that Councilor Swope had raised and you have raised, then the court will look to the totality of the circumstances. Because sometimes things are intended, but they don't always get there in writing. But you establish a certain use or a pattern over the number of years where the court would say, no, I mean, you obviously wanted this to be a park, and that's what you did. And it's called Ingleside Park.
Can you define,
Marco?
can you define totality?
Yeah, so what will happen, now the courts will do that, and so I'll just give you back what they did. That they will look at all of the circumstances attendant to, both the acquisition, like, what was the intent of the donor? What was the intent of the town? What did the town do with the property once they received it? And how long did they continue that use thereafter? Did they do anything that would improve it, enlarge it, or somehow expand it, consistent with its use as a conservation or recreation area? That's the totality. It's like, it's taking the 10,000-foot view.
Yeah, no, I get that. I know that they wanted to donate it for parkland. That's the only thing I was getting at.
Yeah, and they probably did. You know, it was like 2 years before I was born, so I really don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question, anyone?
Thank you very much, Jim, we appreciate your time.
Did you want to hear about ADUs?
Yes. Yes, no.
Oh, okay. So, the continuing saga of the accessory dwelling unit. So the final regs were issued while we were actually at the MMA, and I was at the MMLA, Mass Municipal Lawyers Conference in Boston when the state issued their regs. And they were a little bit different, not substantially different. There's a couple of different procedural things. They took out, they maneuvered some of the language with respect to a bus route as opposed to a bus stop, and, you know, so on and so forth. I think what we're really interested in, and this is one of the things, while 3A, everybody was bearing down on 3A, and said, let's look over here, and the ADUs are coming this way, and nobody's really paying a lot of attention to them, and they were foisted upon the state. So this was one of the things that we had put our sights on rather early, and we're running parallel to this 3A thing, because we know this isn't a unilateral attack. They're doing more than that, more than the 3A. They're doing ADUs, which means you're going to get more units. Now, one side says one thing, one side says the other, the state says something else, depending on what day it is. And the way I look at it is this. We have the authority to write our own statute, or ordinance, rather. It needs to comply with the statute. The statute is a law, it's not a regulation, it's not guidelines. It's in chapter 40A, and then the regulations will then dictate how that statutory intent is promulgated. I do have, and we're still working on it, because I think what we need to do is get some more input from those who are going to be charged with issuing permits and enforcing it, and so on and so forth. But we've actually put together something for submission to the council to be looked at by the subcommittee, which will, as with some of the other things that we've done in the past legislative session, look at what parts you want and which you don't. We try to stay as close to the statutory requirements as we could, and in any situation where there was gray area, we took the benefit of the town. So, and in most cases, that was putting a restriction on something, and so that this doesn't grow beyond its original intent. So, we are required to adopt an accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which the council will or will not do, and it will say or not say what you want it to. And it's fairly streamlined. We tried not to make it too overly complicated, because anytime you put in too many options or too many ors, wherefores, notwithstanding, blah, 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 it raises issues. We took the statutory language as it was set out in the definitions in the statute, because we can't change that. But where the town was giving the authority to make its own regulations, like site plan review. State doesn't, HLC doesn't like site plan review. Well, we do, because we think anything that goes on in this town, and Tony's been on this since like day one, and speaking with Al Legee as well, who was the chairman of site plan, administrative site plan review, we want to know what's going to be built. We want to know whether or not it's going to comport with all the state requirements, with the health, fire safety, and other building codes and other safety measures. And we also want to know whether it's appropriate in that particular house. Because, you may have a one-family house and really not have the room for an ADU. And one of the things we wrote into the proposed, again, and I think, Madam Vice President, I think your committee may be looking at this first. We wrote into the proposed ordinance that anytime what's called a principal dwelling, that's a dwelling in which you would have the ADU, but there's also a detached ADU, which could be a garage or an outbuilding or an old stable or something. But, you look at it and say, does it make sense in here? So we have criteria for a site plan review to take a look at it, not to discourage it, but just to make sure that, a number of different things. Number one, that it's safe. Number two, that it's appropriate. Number three, that you're not overly saturating. And, there's a whole other list of codes, the fire code, the building code, the health code, electrical code, and we want to make sure also that any ADU, if it's, and we've heard, we've had some calls on whether or not, I have this old barn, or I have this old garage that used to be whatever, I want to turn it into an ADU. Yes, be great, but you have to be hooked up to town sewer and water and heat. Well, I'm not. Well, sorry, you can't do it. You're gonna have to do something else. I mean, it's that sort of thing, and it's all like commonsensical. I think in a situation like this, the less legalese you get bogged down to, and the more common sense you inject into the process, I think the smoother it runs. The question came from the building inspector, because we made the building inspector the one who processes these, and the special permit granting authority, and there is a statutory requirement for if you want more than one ADU, you need a special permit. We kicked that to the Board of Appeals, because they deal with that stuff. I think also, in this proposal, I think the provision is still there. In Winthrop, you can't have more than one ADU. I mean, just, otherwise, you're making 3- and 4-family houses, and I don't think that was the intent of the law. So, this is not gonna be an easy challenge for the subcommittee, when you slice and dice this, and I'd be happy to meet with those members. We're looking at this a couple of times a week, and corresponding with other cities and towns who had them in the past, before this law was enacted, and now they have to change a lot of their regs. We're trying to see what they're doing and how it worked out under their old system, and whether or not their new ordinance is going to make things better for them. So I've been in contact with a few solicitors and town attorneys who I know, and they're having a little bit of, not difficulty, they're just spending more time on it than they thought they were. But the state tells us they are there to help us and guide us and give us all of the help and the assistance, and we've sort of declined because we're really not looking for that right now. We want to run our own show.
Counselor Swope.
Thank you. Parking.
Yes. This may be one that I don't want to give away and give if the AG gets hold of this tape. Yeah, we made a very restrictive parking.
Thanks.
And it didn't offend against any particular portion of the statute, but, things like around town, having done zoning in this town for a lot of years, I know that the boards, the planning board, the Board of Appeals, and the council, they don't like front yard parking.
No.
You know, they don't like parking on the lawn. So if you have an ADU, you're not parking in front of it. Well, we wrote that in. And also, we wrote in something that says that you need to, that your principal dwelling, whether it's going to house the ADU or it's going to be adjacent to the ADU, that needs to be parking compliant. So if you're if you're short 1 or 2 parking spaces today, I don't think you're gonna get an ADU, because now that's going to add more.
As long as the ADU, as long as the parking is on the property and it's not,
Yeah,
it's not on the
yes.
street.
Yes,
because we can't-
it has to be on the property, and what we did, and I don't know if this, this is going to have to be something that the subcommittee and the council ultimately is going to have to figure out. We don't want it, we want it in the side of the building. We don't want it in the front of the building. We don't want it 90 degrees or perpendicular to the building. It has to maintain the character of the neighborhood. And, I know that one of the things that is a real hot button about parking is even on your own property, where you're parking. And the town has a right to say that. So, we wrote that in. And it's not to discourage, the installation of an ADU, but if they're going to reconfigure, then they're gonna have to go to site plan review. And I think giving the town more control over this, even though it's a matter of right, you need to control how it happens, when it happens, if it happens. And you give that to, through your final version of the ADU ordinance and instructions to the building department.
Counselor Aiello.
It is a lot of work for the subcommittee, I agree, but one of the things we have to think about is, going back to the discussion we had at the very beginning of 3A, right? Which is that this town already has about another 500 units coming at it that we're zoned for. So those things are coming, it's a function of the market, there's almost nothing we can do to stop that. That'll introduce more traffic, more congestion, and more stress on everything else. In 3A, whether you're on the no side or the yes side, we're both trying to get to the same place, right? We're trying to get to 0 as a result of 3A. The planning board gave us a plan.
Right.
That did that. Some people aren't happy with it. They don't want 0 a different way, but we all want the same thing, 0. When it comes to the ADU thing, again, we should have a discussion of goals. Do we want to encourage additional development, or do we want to try to make this as restrictive as the law will allow us? And are there, like the planning board found, certain clever ways of really doing it? So I don't know that that's the council's policy, but we had a great discussion in 3A that I think had the whole community getting to 0. Again, whether you are yay or a nay. I think some policy guidance should be, we should discuss it here and give some policy guidance to the subcommittee. Otherwise, they're left floundering about, do we want to encourage it, not encourage it, and all that kind of stuff. Doesn't happen to happen today,
Yeah,
but,
right, that's a policy
real
decision,
policy
up to the
issue, yeah.
policymakers.
yeah.
Good point.
Any other questions? Council Swope?
This is probably to have another subcommittee, another time for you to come back. But I understand that you wrote comments to proposed amendments to the provisions of 760 CMR. And you wrote those? We had a discussion about that, as I recall.
Yeah.
I also wrote mine.
Oh.
And I do have a concern about these, and I don't know, if this is just a policy issue. When something goes to the state, does the town council have an opportunity to take a look at it before it goes out of the manager's office and comment on it? Because it didn't in this case. And this is about safe harbor. This is a serious concern that I have about safe harbor. Because they're trying to change safe harbor, which hasn't been changed in years, and all of a sudden, because the exemption case has something to do with safe harbor, all of a sudden, the state is trying to weaken this. And I thought your points were well taken, yours and Tony's, there are many, but I was surprised you didn't do anything about interlocutories, because that will weaken this, I think that will weaken our safe harbor opportunities here, and I just mentioned it, and I do have copies of what I sent.
Yeah, so the interlocutories would be, if you're talking about interlocutory appeals, because what they've done,
I know,
yeah, those were the regulations, interlocutories are governed by law, not by
but the
regulation.
difference is, what comes first? In other words, who goes first? Does the state have to show that they, or the developer has to show that they have met all the requirements? Or do we have to accept a proposal and then have to go through it and do all the work?
Well,
It's an administrative nightmare.
That's right, and to that point, I think the fine difference that they created here in their procedures is if you haven't reached your height, then the state is going to give a lot of weight and a lot of assistance to the developer, especially on a review, right? If you have reached it, not so much. I mean, it's not the same standard of review, I guess is the way I'm saying. And that's why we objected to that, because
Oh, you
it's.
didn't, yeah, I objected even more
Yeah.
strongly than, but I just, President Lettieri, just a question. If we could agree that when something is coming from the manager's office that goes to the state that has something to do with what I consider to be something that the town should think about, that it come to us at least for review.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Oh, we thank you for this item, the ADUs, as well as the discussion on 97. And I'm sure you'll be back here, and I'm sure you'll be a big help to the,
This is my second
Rules and
favorite
ordinance.
place to be.
Oh, I'm sure. Thank you, Attorney.
the other one's a lot more silent.
Thanks, Jim.
We have a second informational session with Chief Wiley.
Thank you.
To review our emergency action plan for the town of Winthrop, and a little discussion on that. Please, you switch that screen to.
Good, no, you're fine. All right, thank you, I appreciate a minute. Thank you, Mr. Council President. If you would just indulge me a minute, I get to the, circle back to how we get to the comprehensive emergency management plan. So the town of Winthrop is part of the Mystic Regional Emergency Planning Commission, the REPC. We're one of 27 communities in the REPC. We meet monthly, we train quarterly. One of the ways that this gets put together is through what's called Tier 2 reporting. Tier 2 reporting is mandatory from the CERC, the Massachusetts Statewide Emergency Response Commission. Mandates that anybody who stores hazardous materials on their property or on their site has to report to the state. One of the things they have to report through the state is the EPCR, the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act. That gets us into this Cameo suite of software in here, which is very specific. In the Cameo Data Manager up there, I'm not gonna open it because there are probably in the neighborhood of 3,000 individual sites within the 27 communities. And every one of them is extremely detailed information that is not for public dissemination. What hazardous materials are stored there, specifically where they are stored, the quantities, the properties of the chemicals, 24-hour contact information, things like that is what makes this, and the operational materials of it, which makes it not a public record. We have made a couple of recent updates to the town, I think I already had it up, to the town's emergency management page. So under the government, go to emergency management. We have been working with the manager's office and put together some of the hyperlinks that are on here for people to sign up for Code Red so that they could get their alerts, hurricane information, local emergency planning committee, information of recovering from a flood, emergency preparedness checklist. So we put these together. I could certainly have much more of them printed, but it's a two-sided for shelter in place and if you needed to evacuate, a go bag information that you would need to take with you.
Chief, do you have a copy of that for all of us?
I don't know if I have enough for all of you, but I have enough that you guys can look at right now, and I can certainly make.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
There's a link for FEMA disaster assistance, winter storm preparedness tips from MEMA, and one of the things that was down here was a special needs form. If anyone had any mobility issues, one of the things is if people are deaf or if they have vision impaired, if they're confined to a wheelchair, if they have transportation issues, mobility issues, these are confidential reports that they would fill out, mail back here or drop off at the town, and we would maintain a website and a database for these people. And links to MEMA, the National Hurricane Center. It's a work in progress, it needs to be updated regularly, but it is something that we're working on regularly through the manager's office. Back to the comprehensive emergency management plan itself. If you would just indulge me a second, I'm gonna read a little bit of it. And the promulgation statement is the primary role of the government is to provide for the safety and welfare of its citizens. The welfare and safety of citizens is never more threatened than during times of disaster and other serious emergencies. A goal of emergency management is to ensure that effective, multidisciplined, multi-jurisdictional mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery plans exist so that public welfare and safety are preserved. This is a 88-page document. The manager and I sign off on it, and then once it's signed off on, it's in effect. This gets reviewed and redone every 5 years. This is actually in the 6th year right now. We started this in March of 2024. This is the draft version of it, but it's
It's been sent to all of the department heads that have to sign off on it. I'm waiting for a couple of more too. So just for the signature page, the town manager, myself, the police chief, the director of public works, the harbor master, the director of public health, and the superintendent of schools all have to sign off on it. And because there is a small section that applies to each and every one of them. It goes in, while it goes into great detail in some aspects of it, it's intentionally very vague in other aspects. It's specific in how we do things like activate the Emergency Operations Center, what we go into activating as well as deactivating, things like that, threat hazards and vulnerability assessments, special needs populations, planning assumptions, incident coordination, ICS, communications plan, ICS 201, whose roles and responsibilities for each of the department heads, for the government officials. One of the things that when I bring up to all of the police officers in town are hazardous materials awareness level trained. Everyone in the fire department is at minimum hazardous materials operational trained. We have some hazardous materials technicians who are trained even higher level than that. And then tier 1, 2, and 3 is when we bring in, tier 1 is an incident that we can handle on the local level. Tier 2 is we bring in some outside assistance, whether it's City of Boston or Metro, the Fire Marshal's office, the hazmat team, the state hazmat team, or if we would have to bring in federal assistance. But one of the issues that people concern themselves, or rightfully so, hazardous materials incidents. And while this is very specific in how we would respond to something like that, it doesn't get into the operational response or pigeonhole you into a one-size-fits-all response to a hazardous materials incident. A hazardous materials incident, for example, the incident itself has to dictate the response. It can't be a blanket one-size-fits-all, we're supposed to do this, 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 and this. There's so many variables that come into play. The product itself, the physical properties of the product, the location, the time of day, the weather circumstances, all of those go into effect. There is a plan in place. I know people have questioned, how it is up to date. There is a plan in place. All of the signatories are in the process of reviewing and signing off on it. And at that point, it will be fully implemented when myself and the town manager sign off.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the chief? Counselor DeMarco?
Chief, this looks very in-depth, okay? So I think this is a good plan. The one question I have is the emergency response. Obviously, there's certain things we have control of, there's some things we don't. And that comes with the ambulances. And I hate to bring this subject up because I think you were so courageous when we lost a girl last year. So I hate to bring it up. But what is the emergency response going to be during these situations?
It's going to be dictated largely by the incident. I mean, we can go back to, just about 2 years ago this time, we had the fire at 91 Veterans Road.
Yeah.
We had a fully occupied 63-unit apartment building with a 4-alarm fire in it. We called for ambulances everywhere we could get, and we only got a few. There is a nationwide problem here that we're trying to address. We're working with the town manager, a long-term plan for us. We're trying to, and there's a significant investment from the town and from the fire department to stand up our own EMS in the firehouse. So we'll either, in the beginning, supplement the outside agencies, but in the end, we'd like to run ALS and BLS out of the fire department.
Okay. Thank you for your heroism.
Counselor Ayala?
Chief, thank you. And again, it's fantastic the way you run the operation as well as the development of this plan. But a couple of particular viewpoints that I have. If we looked at the LA fires as an example, right, it was accumulation of a lot of really good planning, but no one ever envisioned the worst-case scenario. I mean, it was a crazy worst-case scenario, but it happened. And we live in an environment here with two external things that could trigger such a thing. We got planes flying over our homes, and we've got the MWRA. We also have heard from residents over and over again about their concern about the limited egress is out of town as well as ingress of emergency vehicles. So you can imagine a situation where something terrible happens, unusual, and we're having a winter storm, and the state police are closing off the Winter Parkway. And really, we've got to figure out how to man and manage Saratoga Street out to Orient Heights and then onto 1A and all that stuff. Is that kind of stuff being discussed in an interagency task force? And so where are we with that?
So I'm glad you brought that up. Ironically, or coincidentally, I have a meeting tomorrow. I have a Teams meeting tomorrow with the chief of Boston OEM, the Office of Emergency Management, State Police, and the City of Boston Police, to talk about Saratoga Street. Now, one of the things that came up, and you have to be, in speaking to the chief of OEM, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of talk and a lot of money spent on reviewing evacuation plans. FEMA and MEMA will tell you, you have to be prepared to shelter in place for 72 hours. That's part of what the checklist has there. There are things you should have to be prepared to shelter in place for up to 72 hours. Certainly if FEMA gets involved. Winthrop, to nobody's, it's a unique, very unique situation here. It's almost like saying we're trying to evacuate Nahant. If they close Short Beach due to a high tide or an ocean storm or whatever, we all know. We all know on a Friday, if you wanna go to, try out to Orient Heights and it's trash day, what it's like trying to get out of Winthrop. They took down 3 poles on Route 1A, and this town was in gridlock. Imagine trying to evacuate. Now, that being said, I have spoken to a lot of people. I've been at this a long time. I'm struggling to envision a scenario where we would evacuate 20,000 people. Well, we could certainly evacuate an area of the town or a section of the town, and we do have shelters in place, plans for sheltering. We have plans for sheltering outside the community, and they're in the December.
Great.
But yes, we do have a meeting. I have one tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and I'll share whatever information I get out of it with you.
Great, thank you for your leadership on that. That's great.
Counselor Swope.
Thank you.
I love this. I haven't seen this, but this was, I think, on your desk. It's in the fire, police station, this pamphlet, isn't it?
In the police station?
Isn't it?
No.
No, it's not there. Where is it?
Well, we really just created that very recently.
Oh, okay. I
And-
felt like I should have seen it
And,
somewhere.
it's on the town's website.
Okay.
I popped it up, it's on the website, it's on the emergency management page. People can get them themselves, print themselves. I'm happy to print them out. I'll reach out to a local vendor and have,
I talked to
several
Meredith,
of them.
I talked to Meredith a little bit about this, about emergency plans, and she said she served on a committee for a while. And they did have places in Winthrop where you could shelter, where you could go.
we do.
And she said that most of the town, at one point in time, actually knew where those places were. I don't know that. Should I know them?
Well, it's not a secret, because we've used them from time to time. If, we'll open a cooling center, in extreme heat situations, we'll use the senior center for a cooling center.
Okay.
We can use the Cummings School, and we can use the high school if we needed one even bigger. But those are our designated shelters for
I
the
see.
town.
Okay, because I don't know how many people know that, but that kind of information would be
Mhm.
great. And then, is there any practice? Do you all run practice drills on what happens if one of these trucks spill at the, wherever?
There are different levels through the REPC, there's different levels of training. We do them quarterly. We just did when we sent a group to Everett. They did a hazardous materials rollover incident.
Right.
They do tabletop exercises, they do actual practical exercises where it's available. I mean, it's space sensitive. And, but they are done quarterly, and there's one major exercise done every year, somewhere within the region. To say that we're gonna do one in Winthrop every year, we couldn't, obviously, but somewhere within the 27 communities, there's a major exercise.
And if there were a spill, we would hear it on WCAT, we would hear it blasted out, we would hear it someplace, right?
You would, and you would hear it if you had signed up for Code Red. There is a sign up on the emergency management page to sign up for Code Red. You'd get the call to a business line, to a cell phone, to a landline phone. We have the ability, we can put out 60,000 phone calls in an hour.
Counselor DeRoss.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Chief. Great work as always. I just have a quick question that I think maybe town manager might be able to help answer to. We're gonna talk about the climate action plan, the second out of the climate commission meeting we had last week. One of the things that's on our short-term list of things we need to do is to update and publicize the hazard mitigation emergency management plan for FEMA to approve. My question, just for my clarification, is the plan you just reviewed and are talking about, one and the same or just a
Different.
part of it? Different from?
Different, yeah.
Totally different
Yeah.
from? Okay, got it. We use the term emergency management plan for a lot of different things, and so I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, ours is a hazard
what that is
mitigation plan,
versus-
yeah.
Hazard mitigation is the
Yeah.
one we need, okay,
Yeah.
got it, thank you.
Go ahead.
Counselor Munson.
I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to you and the whole fire department. You guys do a lot of hard work, and I have nothing really comment about the plan, other than if I want to see it in its entirety and read through 80 pages, I can do so going to the website.
Certainly.
All right.
I think, yeah, I think the appropriate place to do it would be maybe in an executive session or something like that.
Counselor Costigan.
Yeah, thank you, Chief, appreciate it. A real simple question. Trying to recall if we had evacuation signs up once on Veterans or along the beach. You would probably know better than me.
No, I
You know,
wouldn't.
the hurricane
No, I don't.
evacuation or the evacuation in general, seaside community evacuations like they have in every other seaside
You
community.
do not to my recollection, do not recall those signs.
And if not, would that be a requirement?
No, I don't think it's a requirement.
Okay.
I think, again, to pick, for instance, Revere Street as an evacuation route would be foolish, because that gets closed regularly during high tides, extremely high tides, or anything that blows out of the northeast. You get a big storm in it, they're gonna close it, and it couldn't be a dedicated evacuation route. Again, I have a meeting tomorrow with state police and OEM to talk about evacuating through East Boston. But remember, you know, and I had a conversation with someone today about this. If you're saying, well, you know, their position was, well, you could just take both sides of Saratoga, just run everybody out of town. Well, whatever, but that's great, but whatever we're evacuating because of,
Yeah.
we have to get assets into town.
Right,
Yep.
Right,
right.
thank you.
Any other comments? Again, thank you so much, Chief, for your response, and I'm sure we will have you back.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Good luck at the meeting tomorrow.
Thank you.
Public comment.
Let's talk about that.
Thank you. This seems kind of trivial.
Just name and precinct again.
Oh, Betty Peabody, precinct 4. Seems kind of trivial after all of this talk, but I would like to make a comment about trash on windy days. Especially recycling on windy days. And when people put their trash, their recycling out on really super windy days. It's incredible how it blows around and how people aren't really mindful or aware of when they put their stuff in the barrel, that it just, when it's opened up, it just blows everywhere. And I'm really not sure what I really want to say about this. I just really want to make people aware to be like responsible about filling their barrels, and maybe have the town even do an alert, like we do the parking alerts and the snow alerts and everything, just like on your phone, I get those alerts, and maybe just, it's a windy day, be careful of your trash. And just to reach out maybe to the trash company to, I mean, I've been behind the trash company when they've opened the barrels, people's barrels, and everything just flies out, and I'm just like, you know, what's that about? So I don't know really how to, kind of get this across to people, except to remind them, and maybe in the town manager's,
Report, yeah.
report during the week, just to say something, just to have something said. I don't know, I want this to be serious, but I also want it to be kind of like responsible, you know what I mean? I don't know what else to say, except the barrels are top heavy, they blow everywhere, and I know that we've had like many days recently that it's been windy, and I'm just like crazy about it, it's just like nuts. So, and I'm not the only one, there are a lot of people who think the same way, but they haven't said it, and I'm here to say it. So, that's all, I guess.
Good job.
Thanks, Betty.
Betty.
I want it to be, people, they really should be mindful about it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Mark Center, Precinct 2. I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but I just want to remind the council on the agenda tonight, their commitment to the flooding issue as it relates to the business tonight. And secondly, and more importantly, I was wondering if the town manager could put a blurb in his newsletter every day, that comes out once a week, about being mindful of shoveling. As I walk through the town with my dog, we have habitual offenders, okay, that do not shovel their properties. Perhaps the penalty that goes along with that, their responsibility to shovel it, as if somebody injures themselves on that sidewalk, what can happen to them, and just get people mindful of doing their civic duty.
Thank you. Mr. Dodd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jack Dowd, Precinct 1. I do want to commend Chief Wiley. And there's no better person to be talking about the issue of evacuation than Chief Wiley. I'll change the subject and talk about the Article 97 disposition of land. I raised the issue in 2017. There were many back and forths on the issue of Article 97 since 2017. Piece of property at the top of the hill, 141 Pauline Street, is owned by the town. Other than that, the land is Ingleside Park. It was donated to the town, along with 3 acres along Pauline Street, that the town donated to make the first public park in the town of Winthrop. And it's the same era as the park in New York. So we were going along with what was happening for the good of the people at that time. And it still exists. Green space is much needed here in Winthrop. It's very obvious. As far as Article 97, there's a lot of, there's an opinion by the town attorney, and it's only one man's opinion. I've been talking about this since 2017. For the planning board, for the Board of Appeals, through the town council, and everybody else that's interested in the knowledge that I've researched. And I hope Mr. Cipoletta's three-reading binder goes into the minutes of this meeting. He talked a lot about deeds and everything else. It was too fast. So maybe the people in the town want to know exactly what he said here tonight. As far as Article 97 is concerned, it was a law passed by the state of Massachusetts, the voters of Massachusetts, in 1972, because many cities and towns were using parkland, open space, to build municipal buildings. So Attorney Quinn finally said, we're gonna have a vote, so the state voted, and they said, you cannot change parkland or open space to a different use unless you go through a process. And the process starts with, and it's, in the case that's the biggest case as far as Article 97 disposition of land, is the case in Lowell. The man on the Parks and Recreation, I think his name was Sullivan, I'm not sure, he stated early, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, that he did not want to see Lowell build another school on parkland. He said the last 7 schools built in Lowell were built on parkland. So it starts with, it's a 5-step process. The first process is the Parks Department, or the Park Committee or Commission, whatever you want to call it, has to vote unanimously. And then the conservation, and that's the winter parks. Then the conservation has to vote unanimously. And then the town council has to vote unanimously to change the use of a park, like Ingleside Park. And then it goes before the legislature, and I believe it's a 2/3 vote. Winthrop is the only town that I've researched and been researching for 7 or 8 years that doesn't use Article 97. Every other town does. I don't know why we're so special. The state is gonna be very mad at us for changing the use of Ingleside Park. It was donated as a park, it is a park. Besides 141 Pauline Street, belongs to the town. The rest of that area, from street to street, is parkland. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Marcy.
Hi, Marcy Hamilton, Precinct 2. I want to thank everybody for putting the agenda, having on the agenda the 158 for Yellowstone Milestone. I appreciate the second phase. I also appreciate coming to the climate meeting the other day. It was so informative, so well done. If you haven't seen it, it was just amazing to see all the hot spots and the work being done. But I have another thought. I have a lot of thoughts, as you all know. I just thought the town council of WCAT should replay the finance report that was represented a while back, that was played, I forget, it was in October. He did a great job. It was a long meeting, but he clearly stated our financial shortfalls and our projected issues coming forward. And I think that would be a great thing to show, either have him come again or replay it on CAT. It was a clear presentation of the town's budget on both the school and the town, explaining where the shortfalls are explicitly. I think it would help the override clarity and the lack, and the lack of funds for a firehouse in infrastructure issues. And that's just a thought. It was so well done. And I think the town needs to know that when the override happens, the money's gonna come from somewhere. There are 2 budgets being made, and the townspeople need to be informed if they're not already. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Diana.
Yeah, Diana Vance, Precinct 2. Article 97, thank you, Jack, for explaining to folks what you've been working on for 8 to plus years. Not sure how this was raised as a night, but to suggest that a use has changed. I live down the street. I assure you, we use it frequently. That's preposterous. The desired intent was for a park, and that's how we use it. Very foolish comment. My question to that person would be, do you live here? This person has dedicated his bucket list to preserving that space for the children. And we all owe him a massive debt of gratitude, beyond the 4 baseball fields he's built in this town, and the planting of trees, and the rescuing of humans during the blizzards that demolished other humans. I happened to be sitting next to my father tonight, who walked to the hospital in trash bags while I was being born in the blizzard of '78, while Jack Dowd was literally, going around rescuing people in this town at the same time. I mean, it's just preposterous. That's our park, it's our main park. We all get the attractiveness. Oh, look at this open space over there. We could do so much with this stuff, right? Like Joe, you've talked about micro units, and Councilor Lettieri, you've talked about a mega sports center. At the end of the day, that's the children's park, and that's what we intend to continue to use it as. With respect to ADUs, Attorney Sapoletto is correct in noting that this has slipped through the cracks while we've been focused on 3A. It was an interesting strategy. It's probably an unpopular comment, I'm not as worried about ADUs. But then contrary to Councilor Aiello's comments, we didn't have it coming. These aren't regular multifamilies that are proposed in the town center. These are gifts to developers, no bedroom, no minimum bedroom size, no maximum number of bedrooms, and no occupancy limit. So no on that. Emergency plan, totally appreciate Chief Wiley's basically falling on the sword of others' missteps in the town. I didn't get an alert when we had one of 3 earthquakes in the town just a couple of weeks ago, as we were all gridlocked and couldn't get out of here for about an hour because of an accident in a neighboring community. I'm not sure if anybody else did, so I'm not sure about the red alert thing. And of our 20,000 residents, I am among the folks who have absolutely no idea what to do in an emergency. It's akin to something that a friend of mine recently stated, telling your children how to get out of the house in an emergency and not sharing how to exactly do that. That being said, I'm here about the preposterous idea that Town Manager Marino has suggested about committing our town to complying with 3A. And I am here to provide you, and I will send this to Cipolletta since he's left, the injunction I filed against you two and him about what you plan to do with her. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Anyone on Zoom?
No. Oh, wait a minute, yes, I'm sorry. Vasily Malios?
You tell her that.
Excuse me,
Stop telling
excuse
me
me.
that.
I will.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Vasily, can you start over again, please?
Yeah, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I was just gonna piggyback off of what Diana was mentioning about the 3A action plan. I think that the town council should not entertain this motion by the town manager this evening. There's a lot of things that are happening this week, in the next 2 weeks, regarding the public comment period for the regulations. I would not approve an action plan, period. You guys already voted no on this. Why bring it back up? Don't play into the state game. They are playing games right now. They are trying to convince communities to comply, interim comply, so that they can get this next wave of communities to buy into this. Don't play into the games. It's not, it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. July is the next deadline. If you vote yes tonight to accept an action plan, it's what's gonna stop you from voting yes in July. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
That's it.
All right, correspondence, Denise.
I have a lot of correspondence about the 3A action letter, for and against, of which everybody's name will be put in the minutes on the record.
Thank you. Committee report, rules and ordinance.
Rules and Ordinance met last week. It was myself and Counselor Munson. We went over some edits to the tree ordinance that was adopted a couple years ago that were brought to us by the tree committee and the tree warden. We will discuss those in, under new business, as they weren't coming to the committee with a motion. But there are some small edits that I'll go over in more detail.
Thank you. Climate Commission.
Thank you, Council President. Would you kindly take one and hand it down? Do you have a cord I can plug in?
EHT manual.
Thank you.
There you go.
At this table could use
Yep.
this cord.
This was from the other day, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
These whole presentations?
I think it's 27 pages. if I remember correctly.
You're not planning on going through this whole thing?
I am
now?
not.
Okay.
This is a quick show and tell of the cover slide. Marcy, thank you, by the way, before you go, for the kudos.
Thank you all. Please vote for Kyle Kimbrell and vote 3A extra.
Pico too.
One of the things we wanted to accomplish when we created the Climate Commission and had our first meeting last August, we wanted to get about 6 months in and be able to publish our first version of a climate action plan for the town, which we have now done as of last week's Climate Commission meeting. So I want to say thank you to all the members of the Climate Commission, including Councilor Costigan, and the citizens, including Tom and others who sit on that Climate Commission with us, Kim Dime, Celeste, and it's been a good exercise, because what we did with this action plan, and if you weren't able to attend the meeting, I encourage everybody to go on the town website. If you go onto the government tab and then you go over to the boards and commissions tab, scroll down, you'll see the Citizens Advisory Commission on Climate. Just click on that, and this report that I've just handed out to the councilors is on there. So there's good stuff in here. I will not flip through the deck, but just so you can see the contents, the goal of this is to get very specific about the short-term, the medium-term, and the long-term plan around how we're gonna tackle the issues around climate resiliency as well as decarbonization, to try to attack at the root cause of what's happening with climate change. And we address in here 7 specific, what we call hotspots in town that lots of folks are familiar with, where flooding and other things are happening on a regular basis. So we took a lot of time as a commission, and also with the consultation with the town manager and DPW Director Calla, both of whom I really want to thank a lot, for making sure that the information in here is accurate. And the most important part, obviously, true to its name, is action. That we first identify what's going on in each one of these spots, we know what we need to do, and we take action on it. So later on in the agenda, we are taking action on this as a first step. So everyone, please, this is meant to be a working document. It's meant to be one that we all participate in. No climate action plan of any community anywhere is successful unless everyone is involved. So this is meant to be continually updated, informed. If anyone has ideas, thoughts of things we should be doing, looking at, please, please, please come to a Climate Commission meeting. We meet once a month. And then the last thing I'll say real quick is the intent of putting this into action truly is that when we have the budget season coming up and we end with the approval of the budget in June, we include, as many of you know, a 5-year capital expenditure plan in that budget. And the dollars involved to solve the climate issues around town will probably end up in the $50 to $75 to $100 million range. We have 2 of the hotspots in town, very well identified for the costs that it will take to fix those. There are 5 left that we need to do some homework, some research. We likely need to hire consultants like we did Woods Hole to help us with Morton Street, to identify exactly what the cost is, the best investment for the town to fix it. But at the end of the day, this will become part of our capital plan and therefore part of our formal budgeting process. So if you have any questions, please reach out to the commission. When you go on that website, there is an email address for the commission, so please email us and ask questions. Thank you.
Much appreciated, Councilor DeRosa. Councilor Swope, did you have a comment?
Yes, thanks so much for your work on
Of
this.
course.
It's great. I have a question. Have you gotten, I bet you have gotten buy-in from other communities that want to work with you all on this, right?
Yes, definitely part of our community.
Yeah,
yes.
because I think that's probably going to be required for the funding.
Absolutely.
There's no way we can do it. ourselves, so, and, funding, speaking of funding.
Yes.
How's that going? Okay, but that's something that we ought to be
We have a
thinking
lot of
about.
need.
We
let me
do.
put it that way.
So if you can, maybe you can, we'll talk about it later, but in the committee too, and I have some of this.
Yes, and thank you, by the way, Councilor Swope, for your attendance at these meetings. It's been very, very helpful.
Fun.
Yeah,
I like it.
the focus will be definitely focusing on each hotspot one at
Yeah.
a time and identifying the funding required, depending on what the work is that's required, whether it's stormwater drainage, seawalls, berms, et cetera, the funding sources can be different.
Right.
So we have partners that we're connecting with who help us identify this funding and help us apply for it. So definitely something that will be our focus as we go month by month with these meetings.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yep.
All right, moving on. School department report. School department met last evening. The vast majority, if not all of the agenda revolved around a discussion with the four principals, Matt Crombie, Brian Curley, Kristen Reynolds, and Andy O'Leary. They together made a presentation on the first half of the school year, what's been going on in each of their respective schools. Also, through this conversation, the school committee's discussing and talking about the override, and some of the information that came out of the meeting was, really eye-opening to going from strides that have been made in certain areas of MCAS to strides at the high school in AP testing. Some statistics that, all around demographics are changing, and it's great in a lot of ways. And to look at 10 years ago, for example, 10 years ago in Winthrop, 7.8% of the children in Winthrop Public Schools had English as not their primary language. As of today, 25% of the children in Winthrop Public Schools, English is not their primary language. And that gives us a lot of opportunities, and brings with it, obviously, costs, which is part of this override. But we talked about the potential loss of revenues from the schools with just the discussion of an override, and how, families have to think about their families and think about options if things don't work out the way they had hoped, and looking at other schools and such, and how that, in and of itself, is a family decision. Every family has the right and the obligation to make a decision that's best for their family. But even something like that comes back and affects us in revenue that we receive from the state per child. Talked about athletics and how accomplished we are as a small town in so many areas in athletics, and talked about the cost of athletics. And a lot of people talk about user fees, and they talk about the thought process there is that user fees are paying for our athletics. And although it helps, it's far from the case, right? Athletics cost the school department close to $900,000 a year, and that's in many terms, right? It's transportation, it's fees per sport, MIAA fees, coaching fees, equipment fees, rental fees, and such. And user fees bring in about $150,000 of that. In discussing that variance of $750,000 and looking at potential areas to try to make up, if we're not fortunate enough to get the support of the town on that. Talked about co-curricular activities and how the schools really try to be as inclusive as they possibly can for anyone who wants to participate, whether it's a co-curricular activity or an athletic activity, but realizing the limits of that. And talked about AP courses and how the high school and Principal Crombie's made really good strides, and this is something that I've talked to the principal about for years, because it's important in a lot of ways. It's something that's not required by the school system. And again, anything not required is potentially, looked at. But it's not a requirement. However, it helps children in so many ways, being able to be challenged by their peers, being able to compete against others throughout the nation in similar testing and such, and giving them that added skill to help them if they chose to go into the college of their choosing. Talked about MCAS scores again, and talking about the prep that's given to MCAS. That's helped in so many areas through coaching from lead teachers, from buy-in from the children into some of the activities, and looking at the potential loss of those activities. It's frightening, because they've made some tremendous strides, and just professional development again, and how big a factor that is. But just looking at a lot of the attributes and successes of our 4 schools combined, and to seeing what's at risk, and just trying again to educate, because in the end, it does come down to money and financial requirements of each family, but it's just important to make all these decisions just based on education, and again, I'm having as many meetings as I can. I'll have a meeting in this room tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, discussing anything from firehouse, building committee, firehouse questions, or school override. But just wanted to give that report from the school department. And town manager, floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you. The town manager report was circulated, certainly up on the website. Certainly happy to answer some questions. With regard to the action plan, I did forward around the action plan. I plan to submit this week. One of the things I do want to point out is that, contrary to what's been said, the action plan does not commit Winthrop to anything, only commits to a process. It's a process that the council already wanted to follow. In spite of everyone standing up and yelling at you to vote no, the council held their ground and decided to wait till the planning board brought forward their plan and then vote on the plan, in which you voted no. This is the same process. That's all it says, is that the planning board will look at the new regulations once they're promulgated. They'll take a look at their plan. If we anticipate that they'll be the same, more than likely, we're gonna put in a request for a density exemption. I've certainly made that case and want to continue to make that case. I've always been in favor of a density exemption. I don't believe suing our way there is gonna get us there, but I believe that, putting it and trying to get it into the regulations is certainly a worthwhile event, and I'm gonna do that. But to not file the action plan, one, I wouldn't be doing my job in following the rules laid out in the charter that says we'll follow the general laws, but two, it, puts us at risk, right? There's a lot of grants that are gonna come up between now and July. They probably did it after, the end of the fiscal year period, I think on purpose. They've added language in every grant, we all know that. They've added it to the title grants for the schools, they've added it to the CZM grants, they've added it to anything and everything they can think of. So why risk that when it just pushes the ball out to July 14th? The council can choose not to vote on it, they can choose not to put it on the agenda, they can do whatever they want with it. It's still your right to do whatever you want with 3A. But to submit an action plan just saying that, we have every intention of, at least the planning board, I know, because I've spoken to Chris Boyce on the phone, and he said that, once the regulations are promulgated, they'll take a look at it, bring it up. We still got RKG, on the hook, we still got a few $1,000s left with them, they can at least review it, and then submit it back to the council, and then the council can do what they want with it. But in no way are we committing to the town. I don't have that authority. I can't commit the town to 3A. The only one that can vote whether or not we're gonna adopt a compliance plan in accordance with the law is the town council. And then that's your right. A reasonable person could certainly assume that no one's changed their stance on it, and it's still gonna be either 4-3 or 4-4, and it's gonna be a no, and that's fine too, and then we'll deal with that. But, they pushed the bar out to July 14th, if we don't file the action plan, then we'll be in non-compliance on February 14th. But if we do file a compliance plan, then we have to July 14th, and all it says is that we're gonna commit to a process, that's all. And I'm gonna commit to helping you get through that process. And you can ignore me if you want, but I'm gonna say I'm gonna commit to helping you get through that process. Because you committed to it before, so it's reasonable to think that you'd wanna do it again. Now, certainly open to any sort of comments. I certainly laid out in there why we would wanna push the density exemption. Certainly gonna look to get support for that, put that in. Attorney Cipolletta and I are gonna look exactly in the, existing emergency regulations or old guidelines where you could stick it in and make it easy for them to approve it. Hopefully they'll consider it, no guarantees they will, but that's certainly, we're gonna put our best foot forward, and we are working on that. Because we believe Winthrop should be exempt. I've said that from the beginning, I agree. We are a dense community. If anything, the Commonwealth should be looking at us. But don't risk, the upcoming budget season, the grants, when we don't have to. You can still say no on July 14th and then we'll move forward and deal with what happens after that. But, you know, that's what submitting the action plan does. Contrary to what everyone says, it's not committing us to anything. I'm not saying we're gonna comply with 3A. I'm saying we're committing to a process, and that the council will vote. Now, you don't have to vote. You know, it's just like a town meeting, right? Somebody can make a motion to indefinitely postpone a town meeting, and then it goes away. But, you know, we can commit to a process, and we did before, I would consider you'd wanna do it again, so.
If you
And
could-
certainly open to any other questions.
If you could just talk a little bit, because it's in the town manager report, just a little bit about the 26 budget process and where you're
Sure.
at with that.
We have all the budgets in, like last year, obviously, you know, on the town side, we're, you know, short. I'll have to make some cuts and, you know, get it into balance, which we'll do. You know, but I will stress that, you know, if the override's not successful, then, you know, depending upon if they get one or two of the questions, that will, you know, kick in, you know, future cuts for the town. Because obviously, while we can't give the schools the full 3.5, I would anticipate there'd be pressure from the council and others to, you know, increase what we give them so they can, you know, minimize the cuts on their side and, you know, give the kids the proper education they deserve. So, and we will do that. And I'm working with, you know, Superintendent Howard. She's working on what she would need at a bare minimum, and I'm working at what bare minimum we could give them without, you know, interrupting our services on our end too much. But it'll hurt for sure, but we'll get through it, and, you know, we'll do it. And that'll be up to the voters on April 5th. I do want a special thanks to the DPW. They did get the sandbags around all the houses out there, as promised, on Morton and Banks. And also their performance during the last couple of storms has been exemplary. The roads and sidewalks have been opened up and where they need to be, and, you know, obviously, we'll try to make some recommendations so residents do their part as well, but, you know, the DPW has certainly done. And kudos to them and Steve.
Great job, Steve.
Also, just quickly, the IFB is out on the street for the Pauline Street Fire Station door repair. The bids are due in February 27th. And then we're moving forward with union negotiations. We've had first and second meetings with 3 of the unions. Still waiting to coordinate with the DPW union and the clerical union. So we still got to set up first meetings with them, but, you know, so far so good.
So just a couple of quick things, and I'll open it up if there are questions, but there was a comment earlier from Betty, who just left. And she brings up a really good point, because there's so many people, right? Because you're putting just recyclables, a lot of it is just shredded materials and stuff, and I'm wondering if Capital has some sort of closure that you could just keep, because the tops just are flying open if people put them the wrong way with the wind. Some sort of sort of closure to keep the lid shut, at least, at a minimum.
I can ask, I mean, short of a, you know,
I mean,
most
I
of those
can't
barrels,
even- I mean,
short of a
it's almost
bungee
just
cord or
like
a
a-
clip or something, yeah, maybe.
like a clip
Yeah, like a
that
big
I'm
chip clip or
wondering if
something,
they
yeah.
have, because
Some variation of that.
The
We can ask, I
containers seem
mean,
receptible to some sort of.
during
clip
the
that would
windstorm, I will
just
say
keep it
Councilor
closed.
DeRoss reached out and others, during that windy day. Steve did call over to Capitol, they were able to put another truck in the mix. You know, obviously that windstorm, I think, caught a lot of us off guard. I mean, they were calling for heavy winds, but certainly not that bad that day. And they were able to put another, to try to minimize, you know, shorten the time frame for the pickup and get another truck in the mix. So Capitol did step up a little bit that day
But
to
just in
speed that
general,
up.
and again, Capital tends to, I know in my neighborhood, Capital tends to pick up mainstream trash extremely early and recyclables extremely late.
Right.
For whatever reason. I mean, that could almost be reversed, but, and just a quick comment on this action plan. This is exactly the same process that was done the first time, when we ultimately voted no.
Different
It was a
language in there,
process-
'cause we're at a different
I'm
point,
saying
but
the
yeah,
process is where, it never even came to, doesn't have to come, this does not require a vote of the council.
Correct.
As it did in the first time, and I think the planner at the time, Rachel Kelly, just submitted a plan.
Correct.
Ultimately, the council has a vote, as it did the first time, which we voted in December or November, whenever it was, and ultimately, the council, assuming an action plan is submitted by February 13th, or whatever the date is, the council will again vote on this, or the town will vote on it, somebody will vote on it by the middle of July.
Correct.
That's accurate. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, Councilor Aiello.
First, let me, Mr. President, just thank you for your summary of the school issue. I think that was clear. I think it's important for people to understand how dire the situation is over there with the upcoming vote, so you hit the nail on the head with that one, so thank you. First question is on the upcoming budget action of the $158,000 for flooding. What's in that number and what's not in that number? in terms of the
We've got
things that have to
about
get done?
350 or 380, Steve, right, left? And that's about 158 of that, so, but if you can get a breakdown of what it is.
This will take it to the end of the fiscal year roughly, in terms of keeping the ball moving?
To get the work done?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would suspect that this phase would wrap up in the June, July
Okay.
timeframe. This phase will get us to the point where we'll be able to start applying for the funds.
Okay, so we'll have to also look at the budget season that starts July 1st to think about next year's funding and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that'll be the, sort of the two sequences there. But not included, I'm assuming, is looking at the Fisherman's Bend Marsh feasibility analysis that we got turned down from an MVP grant last time. And the assumption we're making is we're gonna reapply for that during this sort of grace period where we're not yet in violation of 3A.
Right.
Try to capture, that was about 200,000.
Yeah, that was a total of 1.4 for the, down in Morton and Banks, and I think another, I think it's closer to 400,000. I think it's 1.2 and 400
Yeah,
for the
because of phase one and
feasibility.
phase
Yeah.
two work, so,
Yep.
okay, so we still, hopefully to capture about $2 million of state money in this cycle, keep our fingers crossed on that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just want to make sure so that everybody understood, we're going to try to get the MVP money, and if we don't get the MVP money, we may need to do an emergency allocation to get those studies continuing on both Morton Street berm as well as the Fisherman's Marsh set of solutions. But the stormwater management stuff is happening, and we'll do that.
Yep.
I'd like to raise just a point of personal privilege since my name was mentioned. The public should know that the words micro units have never come out of my mouth until this sentence. So someone was trying to use the term micro units to make it sound like I was for a bad thing. I've never even said those words, number one. Number two, there continues to be a suggestion that I want to have micro units or transitional housing or whatever in the center because of 3A. The planning board's report, they were very, very clear, okay, that is all nonsense, that the zoning that the town council passed for the center is the zoning that remains in place without a change. So anybody who comes to this council and suggests that that is not true is misleading their fellow citizens on this. Let's just be very clear about that, okay?
You made
It's in the report, one sentence.
point. I don't want to go on
One
this,
sentence.
please. I
It's
don't want to
one
go on this
sentence,
anymore.
please.
No, you've made
It's
your
in the
point.
report,
Please,
it's in the video. Check it
make
out.
your point. Thank you. Counselor DeMarco.
Yeah, so, as far as the MBTA 3A zoning is concerned under new business, I just want to tell you guys in advance that I will be using my executive privilege to put this off and table it.
Okay, first of all, you could do that.
I'm gonna do it.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you
I'm
don't
gonna
have
do
to
it.
tell us ahead of time, you could do
Well,
it
I
at
could
new
tell you, I
business.
could tell you whenever, like, come on.
Well,
let's-
you can't tell us ahead of time because it's not part of the discussion right
Okay,
here.
fine. Okay. Listen, 80 to 90% of this town is against 3A. 80 to 90%. And the 10, it
You're
was
out of
under the
order
town,
right now.
no, it was under the town
It
manager's
is, and you'll have
report.
every right to discuss it unless you use your council privilege, then you won't. But at that time, you can discuss it or you could put it off. It's
Thank you,
absolutely
Council
up to
President.
Other comment, Counselor?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Manager Marino, Director Calla, for moving forward with the Tileson, Girdleson, Pico funding. I know that the folks over there really appreciate it. We appreciate you keeping that top of mind, and we want to keep that stuff moving on. We also want to keep our eye on Morton Street. We want to keep our eye on Fisherman's Bend. I know you said you were planning on resubmitting that MVP grant application, so that's great news. Thank you. You have an item in here for the Pauline Street Fire Station. I'm assuming bids are due the 27th. That's going to be after our next meeting. We'll have a similar motion to what's on the Tileson Girdleson in the meeting on 3/4 on March 4th, or
Well,
the next meeting?
depending upon the bids and the price,
Okay.
it may not be something we can move out of, it might be too much to move out of capital reserve, so we'd have to look for some funding alternatives, maybe some state house funding, loans, things like that. There's a bunch of different ways we can try to do that, but we'd have to figure that out.
So it might be longer than.
Yeah.
that.
I mean, it might be longer than the meeting right afterwards, but we'd have to come up with a plan, so.
Great, great. And then lastly, from me, and then I'll be quiet. The fiscal impact study of the existing unbuilt units in town.
Yeah, I followed up with the consultant on that, but I haven't heard back yet, so I'll give him an update at the next meeting, but I haven't heard
And
back yet.
again, that's gonna highlight what could or will be coming in the next 5 or 10 years, regardless of MBTA, 3A, anything like that.
Yeah.
That's gonna be what's already approved
Based on our current
in
zoning.
open capacity in town, based on current zoning.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Council Swope.
I have a question for you. Did you want us to talk at all to Tony about the plan that he's submitting, or is that,
No, that's part of the new business.
okay, thank you.
Council Costigan.
Yeah, just the submission by town manager, Marino. Just looking through it. By the way, at the 11th hour, so, and having to work and then pick this thing up last minute, I mean, it's a lot to read. So, just looking at it here. But just a couple of points I just want to bring up in questions as well. The cover letter itself, Winthrop Planning Board Chairperson, plan to review new regulations along with previously recommended plan. Make necessary changes. Are these changes made by the planning board supposed to be significantly different? Was that
This is not-
determined?
That's in the new business, and it will be discussed.
It is new business. Okay, my apologies.
No, that's
My
fine.
apologies.
Yeah, Council Munson.
This is not necessarily for you, Tony, it's more for Denise. Under correspondence, I just thought it was important to mention the Winthrop Commission on Disabilities letter.
Oh, I sent it to everybody, right, yeah, and I did put that online.
Oh, you did,
And the whole-
okay.
And all the councils received it.
I just thought it was pretty
Oh,
important.
yeah, no,
you
yeah,
know.
exactly, yep. Thank you.
And I also wanted to say thank you for all of your effort, and I appreciate how hard this is right now, and I appreciate that you're following the law. Thank you, Tony.
All right, and just one more comment on, you mentioned the budget on the firehouse. Committee reports, we didn't have it down really, but Firehouse Building Committee met last evening. Talked about a open house for the fire station.
I was in contact with Melissa today, and it will be in the newsletter on Thursday,
Which is March,
March 8th,
yeah, from 9 to
9
12.
to 12.
At both stations for the public. Take a ride by to take a look at the current conditions of the firehouse. The Firehouse Building Committee did a fantastic job last night with the meeting, making sure to get ahead of this, making sure to answer every possible question available. There'll be videos on CAT talking about this. There'll be financial disclosures coming out, talking about it. We're gonna be talking about it in a little while anyway, but just wanted to mention that from a committee report and as it's part of the budget. All right, school department. CDI, policy-making committees, we did not have.
Nope,
Nothing in the packet. Old business, there is none. New business. Town council vote to approve to create a new education stabilization fund. Now, education stabilization fund has to be created to prepare us if we're asking, one of the questions on the override is for $1.45 million to go into an education stabilization fund. That fund has to be created. So I am asking the council to create that stabilization fund so it is in place and an if we are fortunate enough to have that $1.45 million question passed. Is there a motion to do that?
Motion.
Motion by
Second.
Counselor Swope, second by Counselor DeMarco. This requires, just for clarification, it's going to be a voice vote, and it requires a 2/3 majority, so it would require 6 members. This would just create a fund. If and when we were fortunate enough to have that override passed, that money would go directly into that stabilization fund. Vice President Belcher.
Thank you. I just had a question. We don't want to send this to finance?
We don't want to send this to finance. There'll be, I have a financial policy question that will go to finance. I spoke with Sarah today, as well as Robbie, as well as the town manager. And this is the way a stabilization fund is
Great.
done. It's just done on a simple vote, a 2/3 majority. Counselor Tassinari.
Thank you, Council President. A quick question on this. This can't be created after the vote? We have to create it before?
We have to have a destination for the potential, this is a separate override question. If you go back to
Yep.
November, there was one question with
Mm-hmm.
monies going two ways. This, in a typical override question, legally, money is guaranteed for that destination in year one. That's how an override technically works. I mean, I'm sure most cities and towns would intend for that money to continuously go. When there's a specific question, or a single question for money to go into a stabilization fund, that money has to go into that stabilization fund every single year. So it's not a choice of the town to say, next year we could just give that money to the school department right away because it's probably gonna go there. We don't have a choice in this, so it has to be a set destination. That destination has to be in place before. Doesn't have to be funded, but it has to be in place.
Right, no, that's good to clarify for everyone who's gonna go out and vote on this question, that there's gonna be nothing in that stabilization fund unless we pass that question.
Correct.
Right. So just wanna make that clear, that just because we're creating the fund.
No.
Doesn't mean there's gonna be any funds in that fund.
There's a need for the
It's gonna
fund.
be
There's a need to
$0 until we
hopefully
pass that
that
question.
1.45, so there will be a balance in that fund. Counselor Aiello.
Again, following up on this question, I want to make sure we absolutely have to create this before the vote, because I'm worried about voter confusion. Is the town council in a position to describe where this could be found in the law, to have to do it before the vote?
I'll have the town manager speak on
Or
it.
the town
I
manager?
mean, you have a vote on the ballot, you need a spot to put it, if once you get the money. I mean, you can,
I asked there must be written somewhere in the law, in some regulation or some,
I'll double check, I don't have that for you tonight, but I mean, we can certainly get it. But I mean, it was a recommendation of our finance team, my recommendation that, you have the spot for the fund to go. I guess I'm confused about why you wouldn't wanna set it up.
why I wouldn't want to set it up is because I'm worried about the winter transcript as an example, right?
Yeah.
They say, town council creates, education stabilization fund. Then they go to the ballot a month later, and they say, create a town stabilization fund. This is gonna be a very close election, right? Just given, and we need every single vote. We can't have anybody get confused and accidentally hear something from a neighbor that says, oh, no, they already got a stabilization fund. You don't have to vote for that second thing. I really worry about messaging here, right? I deeply, deeply, deeply want the override to pass. I want the stabilization to pass. I want to make sure that we're legally compelled to do this, because it just complicates the messaging a little bit if it comes up.
Well, the other
that's
reason
my
I think to
concern.
set it up, and I'll let the council president jump in, because the way it was explained to me was that, the council's gonna also be looking at your financial policies over the next few meetings, because you need to do your free cash policy and decide where to put it. Now, the council president has stated several meetings they want to recommend taking a portion of free cash and putting it into the education stabilization fund. That would need to be done now, as we always set the free cash policy, so you need a place to park that. On the chance that you aren't successful at the election, you at least have whatever small amount of money you put in there to move over. So that was another reason to set it up now rather than later, so that was the other reason that we're putting it on now, so.
Isn't it?
Okay, I will say nothing more. I'm very worried about it.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none. Denise, I'll ask for a voice vote, roll call.
Counselor Tassinari?
Yes.
Counselor Costigan?
Yes.
Counselor Munson?
Yes.
Counselor DeMarco?
Yes.
Counselor Aiello?
No?
Counselor Swope?
Yes.
Counselor DeRoss?
Yes.
Vice President Belcher?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes, motion is passed. There is a creation of a stabilization fund with a balance of 0. Town to discuss new financial policies in regard to free cash. We have had free cash certified recently. I'm going to just refer this to finance. with recommendations to look over the free cash policy to see if we want to make any adjustments to it. Town council vote to amend tree ordinance, Vice President Belcher.
Thank you. I will read the motion in its entirety and then go over what each one of the 4 amendments would mean. So it reads, I move that the town council amend the Town of Winthrop ordinance Title 12, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places, Chapter 12.48, Trees, to make the following amendments. 1, in the definition section, amend the landmark tree section to include the sentence, any public tree with a DBH of 18 inches or greater shall automatically be designated a landmark tree at the conclusion of the definition. Number 2, under permitting activities requiring a permit, amend the 4th sentence that currently reads, no tree work/removal permit shall be issued unless on the following one of the following conditions exists, to add the clause immediately following the comma, and such permit shall only allow for a scope of work necessary to address the reason for the permit. Number 3, under removal of public trees, add the following immediately after the first sentence. Therefore, a landmark tree may not be removed for any non-town purpose. And number 4, under tree memorial program, delete the final sentence that reads, plaques may not be affixed to a said tree, to be replaced by, the tree warden may affix a memorial plaque as approved by the Memorials Committee to a memorial tree if they deem it appropriate based on the health of said tree. The tree warden or their designee must perform the installation of a memorial plaque. So again, these suggestions came to us from the tree committee and the tree warden. They were present at the Rules and Ordinance Committee meeting, which was very helpful to go over the purposes for them. The first one, the definition of landmark tree, we have that in the current tree ordinance, but we don't have any landmark trees designated in town. So this would take any tree with a DBH, which is diameter at breast height, I believe, so like the circumference of the tree, anything.
Divided by 3.14.
Sure, there's pi involved, but, so it would take any tree with a DBH of 18 or greater and designate that as a landmark tree, which gives it certain protections under the ordinance. We have several hundred of trees of this size in town. And this relates to the 3rd suggestion, under the removal of public trees, that no landmark tree may be removed for any non-town purpose. So this means if a resident is trying to widen a driveway or do something to their property that involves removing a landmark tree, that would not be allowed. It can be removed for safety reasons, for town reasons, ADA compliance, stuff like that. Number 2, it just tightens up what the permit would allow. So the permit, as it currently reads, would just say that there could be tree work/removal. This would require it to be a little more specific and say removal of said branch or whatever, just to make sure that only the bare minimum work is done to preserve the health of the trees. And then number 4 gives the tree warden the ability to affix a plaque to the memorial trees. We're trying to bolster the memorial tree program, and I think this is a good way to do it. So, any questions?
There's a motion coming out of committee. Does not require a second.
Second.
Does not require a second. Discussion, Councilor Swope.
Yeah, thanks. I was trying to figure out, I thought all healthy trees, I mean, healthy trees cannot be cut down for no reason, right?
Correct.
Anyway, okay. I was interested, I found out how long it would take us to actually grow an 18-inch DBH. Yes.
Gotta be 20 years, at least.
Yeah. 30, or it could even be up to 80 if it's one of those oak trees that grow really slowly. I'm just saying, that's a long time. And by the way, we can figure out all this. We can figure out how old these trees are, because you can use this, I mean, I can't believe I read all that. Anyway, it's up to you put a stake in the ground, you figure out 4.5 feet tall, then you, let's say that's on your body, that's here, then you go up to the tree and you circumvent, you put a circumference around it. They, by the way, have the actual special tape measures for this. And.
I don't
It's called
know.
tree hugger.
Tree hugger,
I was
and
gonna
then.
say, sounds like a hug.
And you can, then, you measure the circumference, and then you divide that by pi, and that's the DBH. But if you want to know how old it is, every tree has a number on it. And if you multiply that number by the DBH, you can figure out how old it is.
So I think that's kind of interesting. And I like the suggestions that you all made. And I just want to make sure that, that this is actually strengthening the tree issues that you have in place already. Is that right? I mean, it's.
Shall I say something, Mark?
No, you
No,
can't. But you can't right now say anything about it, but,
Well, as a tree warden.
but if you just listen to me for a minute, then it will be further clarified. My understanding is this has not had a public hearing.
Correct.
So we're going to have a public hearing and put notification
For the
February
25th,
25th,
yep.
which we would appreciate your comments at that time for this. So we will hold a public hearing for this as it is required before we spoke.
You're not gonna vote?
We're not going to vote no.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so you'll hold a public hearing. All right. Town council vote to approve $158,500 for the funding of Phase 2 of the engineering at Titleton, Girdlestone, and Pico. And I will refer that to finance, and hopefully we will have that back.
Can we move the question on that tonight, or no?
We can't, we have to go to finance. It's over a certain amount of money. It will be voted on. I'm just gonna say that I'm hoping that you can get a finance committee ready before we can have a special council meeting. I'm always welcome for a special council meeting. If you wanna have a finance meeting next week, I'd be happy to schedule a special meeting. But other than that, we have to go through finance, through the subcommittee, where the amount far exceeds the limits. So, you know,
Were we not discussing it, though? We're not
no, we're not discussing it. I think it's a foregone conclusion where it's gonna land, but,
I would like to
again,
think
I'm
so.
always more than happy to have a special meeting if we deem something needing of it. You could have, you could schedule a 48-hour meeting for a finance committee. We could have a special meeting whenever you like. So, other than waiting, those are the options. But we will refer it to finance. We don't have to decide on when the finance committee meeting is, and if you would like a special meeting, just let me know, and I will be more than happy to post one. Because we all know how important this is, and we want to get it done. I don't think there's any question about that. All right. Town council vote to approve letter to MassDOT Secretary and General Manager Ari Winthrop Ferry. Vice President Belcher.
Thank you. So we sent a letter from the council to the MBTA General Manager and MassDOT Secretary Tibbetts last July, asking a number of things about the ferry, namely to divorce our route from Quincy, to improve the schedule, to have 7-day year-round service, and to make it more affordable for our residents. That letter went unanswered completely, which was very disappointing. So I have written another letter.
A meaner letter.
Meaner letter. It's much more strongly worded. Should I read this letter?
If there's no objections from the council, you can read it.
It's shorter than the first letter, too. Okay, so dear Secretary Tibbetts Nuts and General Manager Eng, the Winthrop Town Council sent a letter dated July 31st, 2024 to you regarding our frustration surrounding the Winthrop Ferry, to which we received no response. It is deeply disturbing that we would not receive any communication, a response letter, email, phone call, or a meeting request after our letter was received. Our letter outlined a number of concerns regarding the Winthrop Ferry, including boat maintenance, travel routes, affordability, and scheduling. As a representative body for the people of Winthrop, the Town Council is seeking to ensure reliable transportation for our residents, especially given our unique geographic location and proximity to Boston. Our primary asks in the original letter were for year-round 7-day service from Winthrop with no more than 2-hour maximums between trips. Prior to the 2024 ferry season, the schedule had not been wholly advantageous to those working in the city who wished to use it as their primary commuting method, given the ferry's scheduling and the lengthy time needed to complete a route that included a stop in Quincy. During the 2024 season, notably exacerbated by the Sumner Tunnel closures, Winthrop saw a decrease in ridership as the boat was turning away passengers at our dock due to reaching capacity in Quincy. It is wholly unacceptable that the Winthrop riders were turned away when it is Winthrop's vessel and Winthrop that originated the service. While Winthrop faces a number of challenges in the public transportation space that we seek to partner with the MBTA to address, and we do wish to engage in discussions about these in the near future. We ask that you focus on the ferry first as we move towards a typical season of operation. Ensuring direct, frequent, and affordable ferry access from Winthrop to the city of Boston is paramount in supporting our community's transportation needs at this time. As one of many communities that the MBTA services, Winthrop consistently falls to the bottom of the priority list. We are asking yet again that you prioritize correcting this issue, beginning with the ferry. Attached is our original letter for reference. It goes into much deeper detail about the important concerns we have. In our last letter, we highlighted that it is time for action, not discussion. We requested a proposal for a 2025 ferry service inclusive of 7-day service and divorce from Quincy. We did not receive this proposal, an offer for discussion, or an estimated timeline on when we could expect either of those things. Our expectation at this juncture is that we see swift action on this matter. We look forward to hearing back from you.
Very well worded.
Good job.
There's a motion from Vice President Belcher. Is there a second? There's a second by Councilor DeMarco. Any further discussion on the motion to send the letter? Councilor,
Great letter.
Councilor Dross?
I'll echo that sentiment, and I'm just curious if we get the same result, what will we plan to do? Any thoughts?
So we're CCing this to Senator Ed Markey, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Representative Catherine Clark, Senator Lydia Edwards, Representative Jeff Turco. So following up with all of those parties and their offices would be the next step.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Vice President.
Seeing other further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Abstain. I want
One
abstention.
abstention.
Thank you.
You guys have it. Council to vote in a firehouse debt exclusion question. So we've talked about this. It's going to be on the ballot April 5th. We have to formally vote on a motion,
Motion.
and I will read the motion. That the town appropriate the sum of $38,500,000 for the demolition of the old middle school and auditorium and for the design, engineering, constructing, equipping, and furnishing of a new fire station, including the payment of cost incidental and related thereto. And to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the town manager, is authorized to issue bonds or notes under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, or any other enabling authority. That's the motion. The ballot question would read, shall the town of Winthrop be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so-called, the amounts required to pay for the bonds issued in order to pay cost of the demolition of the old middle school and auditorium, and for the designing, engineering, constructing, equipping, and furnishing a new fire station, including the payment of costs incidental or related thereto. The summary of the ballot question would read as follows. Town council has voted to appropriate funds to demolish the old middle school and auditorium and build a new fire station in the town. The new fire station will replace the 2 existing stations that will be deactivated upon completion of construction. The appropriated funds would authorize vendors to design, engineer, build, and furnish the new fire station. The funds would be borrowed by the treasurer with the approval of the town manager and approved by the town manager. The cost of the debt service, like a mortgage, would be added to your taxes only until the debt service is paid off. Again, just like a mortgage, when the debt service is paid off, there will be no fire station debt service payments added to your taxes. The entire debt service payments are anticipated to begin in fiscal '28, which, for clarification, would be in the period beginning July 1st, 2027. A yes vote would authorize the town to fund all the cost of the building the fire station, anticipated not to exceed $38,500,000, by issuing bonds to pay the cost of the project and to temporarily exclude the amount of debt from the provision of Proposition 2.5. This is a definition of a debt exclusion. In other words, the debt exclusion is a means of funding a particular project with a temporary increase, which we anticipate 25 years, in the levy limit. The debt service is excluded from the levy limitations of Prop 2.5. A no vote would not authorize the town to exclude the debt service from the levy and will be held to the limitations required by Prop 2.5. The town would not be able to build the fire station or need to bring forward a new or similar ballot question seeking authorization for a debt exclusion at a future time. So again, we're voting for the motion that was made. Do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
By Vice President Belcher. Open for discussion. Councilor Aiello.
No, I was
Oh,
trying
I'm
to
sorry.
second it. so.
I'm sorry. This, again, will require two-thirds vote. We will have a voice vote.
No, just a question.
Yes.
I know that you have worked on how much it would cost the taxpayers. Where does that go in our brochures or in our?
It's going to be,
marketing
we have
material?
a firehouse building committee
Yeah.
website, which will be up and renovated and running by the end of the week, first of next week at the latest. There will be a cost calculator there for people, but I could give the quick Reader's Digest version. We looked at this, and Tony and I looked at this also at $38,500,000. Typically, when we're building a school or some sort of major project, we're looking at a 30-year mortgage, like basically the regular person would do for a house. So we looked at that, and we thought it would be prudent to look at a 25-year rate as well. So at $38,500,000 to the average assessed value, not retail value, the assessed value of your house, which is on your real estate tax bill, the increase would be on a 30-year, it would have been roughly $459 a year, roughly $115 a quarter when you get billed. On a 25-year mortgage, it would be $489 a year. So roughly a $30 increase per year, roughly a $7.50 increase per bill. The savings to the taxpayer comes out to the amount that you would pay over that course of time is roughly $2,400 in savings. The savings to the town for the cost of this project going 25 years rather than 30 would be $6.8 million. So I just thought that it's much more prudent, financially wise, and gets it off the tax rolls that much quicker and saves the town a good chunk of money. So the motion is to do this for a 25-year period. Again, when you're building a major project, you don't go out. If this was to pass April 9th, April 5th, we do not go out April 6th and get a mortgage for $38 million. We slow roll that, right, as you need it. If we're hiring an OPM, we might pay a deposit on that. If we're hiring an architect, an engineer, doing land surveys, demolition of the building, we just borrow in spurts. The full amount of this $480 yearly payment would not kick in until, at earliest, July of 2027, which is the beginning of fiscal 2028. And again, just for clarification, other debt exclusions that we still have on the books is Miller Field. The average price people are paying on Miller Field, again, for that average $689,000 assessed value is roughly $148 a year. That comes off the tax rolls the first, July of 2030. So that would reduce the tax debt, right? So the actual, once you're paying this fully in 2020, fiscal 2028, and fiscal 31, you'll see a reduction of that by $148. And then the other major debt exclusion we have out is the middle high school, which 9 years after the Miller Field comes off, the middle high school comes off, and that the taxpayers are paying now on average $820 a year. So a lot different than an override in terms of how it's financed and the amount of money. So this would be for 25 years. The savings over that from 25 to 30 is roughly $6.7 million for the town. Sorry, $8.6 million
Quick question
for the town.
on your wonderful explanation, thank you for that. So when the Miller Field comes off July 2030, that $148 a year you mentioned, that would offset the 489, so 489 comes down.
I mean, people have a
comes
funny
down.
way of
Roughly.
rationalizing how taxes affect them, but yes, theoretically, you know, your taxes would decrease by $148 that year from that debt service, correct? And then they would decrease 9 years later at roughly $825 a year.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Tassinari?
Yes.
Counselor Costigan?
Yes.
Counselor Munson?
Yes.
Counselor DeMarco?
Yes.
Counselor Aiello?
Yes.
Counselor Swope?
Yes.
Counselor DeRoss?
Yes.
Vice President Belcher?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes. Motion is passed. Town Review EOHLC Action Plan MBTA 3A. Counselor DeMarco. Now, let me, and I know what you're gonna say, but let me just give you fair warning or whatever, right? If you use your council privilege, which you have absolutely every right to do, the discussion on this would be carried over till the next meeting. The action plan would still be submitted by the town manager before February 13th.
Without our vote.
It doesn't require our vote if you use your motion, if you doesn't use your motion. What it does, if you don't use your motion, is it gives the chance for discussion. If you use your motion, which you have every right to do, we can discuss it after it's submitted, basically.
So they're gonna submit this, even though we already voted no.
Correct. It was the same, it's a process. It's not, we're not voting it.
BS, dude. BS.
Are you using your council privilege?
Yes.
Okay. Council privilege has been used by Councilor DeMarco. Discussion is closed. Appointments. I have 3 appointments to make, I think. Motion that the town council accept the appointment made by Town Council President Lettieri to appoint Drew Stock to the Tree Committee with a term expiring date of June 30th, 2028, or take any other action relative thereto. Second by Vice
Second.
President Councilor Tassinari. Beat you to the punch. Any discussion on the appointment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. I have 2 additional appointments to be made to the Firehouse Building Committee. The first, that the town council accepts the appointment made by Town Council President Lettieri to appoint Hannah Belcher to the Firehouse Building Committee with an open term expiration date or take any other action thereto. Is a second?
Second.
By Councilor DeMarco. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, 801. Also, that the town council accept the appointment made by Town Council President Lettieri to appoint Jack Dempsey to the Firehouse Building Committee with an open term expiration date or take any other action relative thereto. Jack,
Second.
longtime Winthrop resident, seconded by Vice President Belcher. Jack is, obviously, as we all know, a retired Boston Fire Commissioner with over 36 years of experience with the Boston Fire Department. Incredible amount of expertise, former deputy fire chief and fire marshal. I'm very happy to make this appointment and encourage the council to share that excitement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Welcome, Mr. Dempsey, to the Firehouse Building Committee. The next Firehouse Building Committee is on February 25th.
Fourth.
4th?
24th.
Sorry, I mean, so many days.
Yeah.
February 24th, it's going to be 5:30 to 7 PM. It's going to be in the Harvey Room. Vice President Belcher and Mr. Dempsey would be sworn in at that time to the committee. Again, thank them for their work, and hopefully it's a long stint. Hopefully it's a 3-year stint. Let's move on. Let's get back in order.
Oh, so you would have to implement the firehouse if it gets approved. Oh, that's awesome.
2025 Ordinance Review Committee, again, the town charter, which was established back in 2005. The thought of the Charter Commission that it's not a perfect document, and it should be reviewed every 5 years. In the COVID year, we had an interruption in that, which enabled us to do an ordinance review a couple of years ago. We're back on schedule to do a 2025 review. I will be making the appointments to that committee at the next council meeting. I encourage anyone who is interested in that to send the council clerk an email. You could go online, get a committee application, and fill that out. That is usually a 6-month gig, so to speak. And recommendations would come back Recommendations would come to the council would vote for them, it would require a 2/3 vote, it would then go on the ballot in November for any potential changes to the charter and ordinances. All right, let's do public comment. Public comment, Mr. Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jack Dowd, precinct 1. Concerning the cost of construction of the playhouse. If it goes over, and I don't want to miss it tonight, I just wanted to mention, comment that if it goes over, what conditions will the town be facing if it goes over cost? Right now, the Suffolk Downs project is in negotiations. And the reason they're in negotiations is because of the cost they're anticipating. They can't figure out a cost. I know what this 38.5, whatever it's gonna be, when we get to it to spend the money, might be much, much more. Obviously, because construction costs don't go down. Maybe you might have a few dollars left over if you overprice it. Negotiations are ongoing with Suffolk County. That was supposed to be a fast project. They've only completed about 500 units, anticipating that they were going to have 15,000 units over there. So, cost is at the utmost. As far as Aiello's concerned, he was putting his finger over this way about something. I don't forget what it was. He said I never mentioned this. Back in 2017, we had a forum at the high school, and Mr. Aiello and somebody else was up on stage showing this structure on Pauline Street that was 48 feet high. It went from Waldemar to down Waldemar, along Pauline Street, on the sidewalk, and then down Walden Street. And that, Richard, whatever you call it, this plan or proposal is still available, I was told. And so I'd like to bring that in to know exactly what you proposed on Ingleside Park. Then everybody will know the truth. You have it, bring it in here, show us, and then we might believe micro, we might believe 48 feet, we might believe no parking, but let's expose this. You mentioned in this room that before you came to the council, you had nothing to do with anything in the town of Winthrop. No commissions, no committees, no picking up papers, no building fields, the whole bit. You said that in this room. Yet when we come to you talk the most about different, whatever you're talking, all you're gesticulating, it bothers everybody. As far as I'm concerned, you have contributed nothing to the benefit.
If we could just stop the criticism to a point, you could make a point, you could.
He was pointing at me. He was pointing at me.
I'm just asking you to be civil
So
and
he
to
can
not.
point and tell everybody.
I'm just asking you,
that's
Mr.
a
Dow,
lie.
to be civil and to not.
Civil?
Yes.
Well, that goes both ways, One day he's swearing at me, the other guy, he's making gestures like this. You do nothing about it, Jim.
Anything else?
Until,
Anything else?
it benefits you. Yeah, there's something else.
Okay, well, your time is up. Thank you.
I can wait.
Any other public comment, please? Yes.
Brendan Cooney, Precinct 5. Just wanted to thank first Councilor DeRoss for the Climate Commission meeting last Tuesday. It was, for me, finally seeing what needed to be done for PICO on a slide that I can share with my neighbors. It was invaluable because I haven't had it. And outside of email chains that I am and not on and forward along, it was just really helpful. So thank you. I was really hoping that we could see a solution on the 158,000 for our neighborhoods. I ask if a special meeting is needed, please just get the special meeting needed. We've been talking about this endlessly. Many nights I leave my wife and my toddler at home and I sit with you all to respect the process. And now let's get some action. I thank my neighbors who are here tonight to let this be known with me, and that's it. So,
Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you. Diana, please. You were first and then.
Diana Vance, Precinct 2. I want to start out by publicly admonishing any counselor who creepily whispers curse words in the ear other fellow counselors that everyone hears over Zoom in these meetings. That's not helpful. With respect to this plan that is suggested to be the same plan as the one submitted in 2023 with Rachel Kelly, who immediately quit, that was submitted behind closed doors prior to the SJC invalidating the guidelines, which the town manager has just confirmed are exactly the same as the emergency regulations, which we are actually challenging. The difference being we filed an exemption case. So to suggest this is no big deal, as you as you pledge to submit a district compliance application to EOHLC no later than July 14th, 2025, is preposterous. Okay, for transparency, one of our arguments to the court is, hey, we know your hands are somewhat tied here, you can do something, but our suggestion is that you remand this case back to the EOHLC. What do you think to actually legitimately look at our hardships? The trucks, the airport, our land size, all of that stuff. What do you think they're gonna do when on one hand they have everything going for us, our density, everything else, and in the other hand they've got this guy saying that we have a winning vote? Because that's what this action plan actually says. It says it will turn out differently this time. And if you don't believe me, read it for yourself, and I hope you do put it online. That's exactly what it says. So to suggest that you would like the town to be exempt, obviously you vehemently ignored our active case in Superior Court, which we fought very hard to get there, despite the letters that this town council has sent that have been ignored. You know, we actually did something about that. We hoped that would turn into something. It didn't. I just want to say, like, wow, we really trusted you with that Dick Dimes, Dave Hubbard study. We came to you at first with this idea. I presented everything, all the reasons that we should be exempt from 3A, and one of our committee members suggested that we hand over our core piece of, argument, our study, which says, hey, we have this very unique safe harbor from 40B. We should give it to them. We should give it to the town manager. We should give it to the town council person. We did that. What did you all do? You handed it to EOHLC. Fast forward, now we're arguing to keep our safe harbor from 40B because a statute that hasn't been touched in 25 years is all of a sudden like the object of their desire to change, for the record. We are doing everything we can to protect the people of this town. What we see from everyone here, MAPC representation, MBTA representation. What about the people in precinct 5? What about the people in precinct 3? No offense, Hannah, I like your treat. Thank you for doing that, but these people are being neglected. We filed an injunction against you. You risk personal civil liability and contempt of court should you ignore the court's authority in this matter and continue to ignore the rulings. And shame on you for taking our money and working against our interests. Those people don't make $200,000 a year, but we're giving it to you. What a big mistake.
Thank you. Yes.
My name is Ellen D'Agostino, 29 Pico Ave, Precinct 5. I'm here with Brendan and Audra and the gentleman there on Sunnyside too. Thank you so much. It's disappointing that I leave work early to determine that there actually is no vote today when it's on the agenda. So my question is to you all, why is it on the agenda to vote for the $158,000 when it didn't happen tonight? So that's all. The agenda was very misleading and it's unfortunate.
Any other comments? Yes.
Carol Meach, can you unmute, please?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you, Mr. Calla, for keeping our streets nice and clear of the snow every few days. DPW is doing a fantastic job. I have a couple of questions about the letter that's going to go to the EOHLC, and one of the questions I have is, could something be written in there that says that depending on what comes back for the new regulations, that Winthrop reserves the right to rescind the letter. I'm not sure if that's allowable in the letter, but could there be something that kind of gives us an out to, once the new regulations come out? That's one question I have. And is the letter going to be shared on the town website once it's sent?
It's already up there.
It's already up there, he said.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
And
questions?
then, I do want to quote a little bit of our town charter about conduct. We very clearly heard Councilor Aiello swearing as he was speaking with Councilor Swope on Zoom, which is unfortunate because I think families can also see this once it's posted. And section 1.7 of ethical standards says, elected and appointed officers and employees of the town of Winthrop are expected to demonstrate by their example, general conduct, and performance of their duties and responsibilities the highest ethical standards to the end that the public may justifiably have trust and confidence in the integrity of its government. Elected and appointed officers and employees of the town of Winthrop are expected to recognize by their acts demonstrate that they act always as agents for the public. I think that more often than not over the last year, we've seen less than kind gestures and comments. So I would like to ask that maybe going forward we can consider behaving better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Denise?
Jim, I apologize to the councilor.
You may apologize.
I'd like to publicly apologize to the councilor.
Again.
For losing my temper, and I'd like to apologize to the public that had to hear it. I have deep frustrations over having my words and actions being mischaracterized continuously. I let that get the better of me. It should not. I should be better than that, and so I apologize to you for that.
Just stay home.
I got one more.
No.
Yes,
This-
please.
No.
Please.
No.
Please.
All right, public relations. It's time to renew your parking sticker and dog license online of the Town of Winthrop website. Again, I will be here tomorrow evening answering questions for Firehouse Building and for the school override. For all three questions, that will be on the ballot April 5th. I encourage people still to register to vote. You have until March 26th. You will also have the ability to go in and request an absentee ballot. So, you know, we want everybody to try to vote on this, everybody to try to get educated on this. It's incredibly important for our town. Two of our biggest departments with public safety, with the fire department, and how they put their lives on the line for us. And again, for the schools, I look at the side of that ATC building, and I see the sign that's been there since it was the Willis School, and it says, "The destiny of our nation depends on its youth." So get educated on the process, try to understand. The school budget is a very difficult item to understand, but try to understand, ask questions. We're always here to answer. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilor DeMarco, seconded by Councilor DeRosa. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Meeting adjourned.